the Honorable Speakers of the National Assembly and Senate, the Honorable Members of the National Assembly and Senate, the Chief Justice and the leadership of the Judiciary, Cabinet Secretaries, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, fellow citizens, ladies and gentlemen. 2 years ago, when I delivered my first State of the Nation address, I had a vision to sell. Today, I have a story to tell. A story written not in the quiet offices or the comfort of boardrooms, but out in the blazing sun of our farms, of construction, our affordable homes now rise. Grit of our community health workers, doctors, medics, who refuse to surrender in the quest for universal health coverage. It is written in the hum of our factories, determination of and finance their vision through the Hustler Fund, in the courage of our young people working on housing sites, in the Climate Works program, in the digital ecosystem, and in the bravery of those who, looking beyond our borders, have sought livelihoods abroad to sustain families back home. A story of sacrifice, a story of sweat, a story of progress that has not come easy. It is a story you can see in the numbers, feel in the homes, and trace in the lives transformed across our republic. A story whose facts are available for all to examine, except perhaps for the cynical who have no facts. Today, the evidence is clear, evidence of promises made and promises kept. In just 3 years, we have built not monuments of words, but foundations of progress. And yet, even with these achievements, I am convinced that this is only but the beginning. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, as I prepared this address, I reflected deeply on the long road we have traveled as a nation. 62 years shaped by struggle, sacrifice, hardship, triumph, and milestones that have affirmed our spirit. From that reflection came one undeniable truth. We have made commendable progress, but Kenya still punches way below its true weight. This nation has the talent, the resources, and the spirit not just to improve, but to leap and to make the transition from a developing country to a developed one within our lifetime. That is why I speak today with full conviction that history has summoned this generation, our generation, at such a time as this, to a higher purpose. Some eras are shaped by events. Others are defined by the decisions a nation makes. And today, Kenya is called to make such a decision. The journey and finally turn into lived. To do this, of being we must step beyond the familiar and the ordinary and reach with courage, clarity, and conviction for nothing less than excellence and greatness. Therefore, As we examine the achievements of the past 3 years, results that have laid a firm foundation for equality of opportunity and a nation where no one is left behind. Today, I will also place before you not just a vision, but a national project that is realistic, grounded, and entirely within our reach. A vision not just to grow, but to transform. A roadmap not merely to move forward, but to rise. To rise from developing to developed. To rise from potential to reality. To rise from promise to prosperity. To rise from the third to the first world. To rise finally into the Kenya we have long imagined. The Kenya we deserve. For long, our ambition was held hostage by small thinking and ordinary expectations. But that era must now be confined to the past. Today, we stand on the threshold of something far greater, a moment in which we can say that our parents dreamed of and what our children yearn for, we will accomplish in our lifetime. As we know, this is achievable because others have done it before. I have often spoken to Tigers, Hong Kong, Malaysia, and by the way, members, they will be here. At independence, our people way. They had no extra. They were not. They simply had to make disciplined choices. They invested in their people, demanded excellence, and refused to be trapped in the limitations of their circumstances. They refused to make peace with mediocrity. Today, they stand as first world economies. If they could rise, so can Kenya. It can be done. Let me repeat. It can be done. Later in this address, I will set out the strategic choices, the reforms we will deepen, the sectors we will unlock, and the investments we will prioritize to move Kenya to the next level. I say all this not as a personal badge of honor, but as a recognition of what we have achieved together, the Kenyan people, in all arms of government and across all political formations. The last 3 years have not been easy. We have agreed, disagreed. Disagreements have carried great cost. Compromised, confronted hard truths, and we have endured storms invited. But we all take comfort that it has not been for nothing, for this is how far we have come. At a time like this, in 2022, Kenya was in distress. Inflation had soared almost to double digits. A fuel shortage threatened to paralyze our economy as oil marketers struggled to access dollars. The shilling was in free fall. Foreign reserves had hit historic lows. Debt service consumed more than half of our revenues. Confidence, both local and foreign, had waned. International analysts warned that it was no longer a question of if, but when Kenya would default. Within that context, we acted. We restored fiscal discipline. We eliminated wasteful subsidies. We rationalized public expenditure. We strengthened revenue collection and placed our economy on a path of recovery and sustainability. Inflation, which stood at 9.6% in 2002, in 2022, has steadily declined to 4.6% as of last month, bringing much needed relief to households. The shilling, once in perilous downward spiral, has stabilized at 129 to the dollar for nearly 2 years, a direct consequence of prudent monetary policy and disciplined fiscal management. Our successful Eurobond redemption signaled to the world that Kenya honors its obligations. 3 years ago, Kenya was ranked the 8th largest economy in Africa with a GDP of $115 billion US dollars. Today, our GDP has increased to $136 billion, moving us up to become the 6th largest economy on the continent, according to IMF. This steep rise, ladies and gentlemen, is not accidental. It is the product of deliberate choices, disciplined execution, and strategic reforms that have strengthened our economy and unlocked its potential. Our foreign reserves passed US dollars 12 billion in independent Kenya. Certainty for economy and restored investor confidence. Markets have taken this week of the world institutions, including Standard Chartered and Goldman Sachs, that Kenya's economy 5 and 5 in 20 is anchored in lower credit, rising improved household spending driven by low and a broadly economic environment. Pause. From B- to a forward revision in many, renewed international confidence. This upgrade lowers our risk, attracts more investment, and reduces borrowing costs for both government and the private sector. Our foreign direct more than from US dollars or about 60 billion shillings to US dollars 1.5 billion, almost 195 billion Kenya shillings in 2024. In the last 36 months, over 300 new businesses, including 500 foreign companies, have registered and set up shop in Kenya, reflecting renewed confidence and improved ease of doing business. Nairobi Securities Exchange has recorded a powerful resurgence, recognized as one of the best performing emerging markets globally. Since January 2025, investor wealth has grown by over 1 trillion shillings, driven by a broad share price rally that has re-established the Nairobi Securities Exchange as a premier asset class. The NSE is on track for its strongest performance in over a decade, building on last year's remarkable gains. This renewed vibrancy is a clear vote of confidence in Kenya's direction and in the reforms we have undertaken. In short, Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the world The world's most respected economic assessors and market sentiment are affirming that what we already know, that our economy is strengthening, our prospects are brightening, and confidence in Kenya is rising. Our critics, the high priests of eternal pessimism, who criticize without responsibility and take alternatives, will want you to believe that in the wrong direction. But while everyone may beauty of our democracy is entitled to manufacture self-serving falsehoods and traffic them as facts. And facts are exactly what I present here today: clear, verifiable, and indisputable. Mr. Speaker, one of the greatest contributors to the high cost of living, Kenyans in 2022 marched with empty sufurias as tax symbol of frustration and unbearable cost of basic commodities. From the very outset, we made an intentional and strategic decision to subsidize production and not consumption. We understood that lasting relief would not come from temporary subsidies and price controls, but from strengthening the foundations of agriculture. We that agriculture is not a sector of our economy. If create jobs and spur exports, agriculture had to be the fulcrum of our transformational agenda. To organize the sector and improve service delivery, we launched an integrated digital platform to register farmers. In 2022, fewer than 300,000 farmers were on record. Today, over 7.1 million farmers are registered on the Kenya Integrated Agricultural Management Information System, giving us visibility to design scientific targeted interventions and eliminate extortionists, getaway brokers, and drive out cartels and middlemen. This has enabled us to implement the fertilizer subsidy program at scale. To date, over 21 million bags of affordable fertilizer have been distributed, reducing the price by nearly 2/3 and saving farmers Kenya shillings 105 billion so far. This year alone, we delivered 7 million bags of fertilizer and 35 million kilos of certified seed. And next year in 2026, we plan to distribute 12.5 million bags across all the 1,450 wards, ensuring every farmer has access to affordable inputs. The impact has been phenomenal. Productivity in all our agricultural sectors has gone up. National maize harvests have risen from 44 million bags in 2022 to 67 million bags in 2024, setting the stage for a historic harvest this year of 70 million bags. The results are visible in markets and homes. The price of a 2-kilogram packet of flour has fallen from what it was 250 in 2022 to as low as 130 today. For millions of households, this is meaningful daily relief. The transformation across our value chains is equally compelling. Tea production has grown, with earnings rising from Kenya shillings 138 billion in 2022 to Kenya shillings 215 billion in 2024, a 56% increase. The coffee sector, once on the brink of collapse, is roaring back. Nearly 50,000 seedlings have been distributed, earnings have risen from an average of Kenya shillings 70 per kilo to now between 120 and 150 shillings per kilo. We are on track to increase exports from 48,000 metric tons to 60,000 metric tons this year, and projected to reach 150 million tons in 3 years' time. Edible oils acreage under production expanded by 90% between 2022 and April 2025, cutting the edible oil import bill by 17 billion in 1 year. By 2027, we aim to halve this bill, saving Kenya nearly 60 billion in foreign exchange. Cotton production has nearly tripled. Cashew nut yields have grown following the distribution of 900,000 seedlings, and so has coconut output after the provision of 1 million seedlings. The sugar sector, long troubled, is now stabilizing. Area under cane is up by 200,000 acres. Production has surged 76% to over 815,000 metric tons. Imports are down 70%. To secure this process, we have leased Nzoia, Muhoroni, Soni, and Chemelil factories to competent private sector operators. Our livestock value chain is rising. Leather exports are up 56% to Kenya shillings 2.5 billion. Local shoe production now exceeds 11 million pairs, and meat exports have grown 45% to 12.5 billion. In dairy, milk production has surged to 5.3 billion liters, while exports have nearly doubled to 9.4 billion. Dairy farmers' support has enhanced with the installation of 230 new milk coolers. Nearly 8 million animals have been vaccinated, and Kevevapi has produced a record 94 million vaccine doses, which are used locally and also exported to our neighbors in the region. We have reduced the cost of sex semen from 8,000 shillings per dose to 1,000 for our dairy farmers. The outcome of these reforms is unmistakable. We have enhanced food security, raised farmer incomes, driven agro-industrialization, and expanded Kenya's export footprint. This is the transformation now unfolding, filling the national governance, particular development as required under Article 10 of our Constitution. It is in accordance with this constitutional duty that I report to this House today. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, let me now turn to healthcare, the foundation and the heartbeat of every nation that chooses compassion. Over the last 3 years, undertaken transformation of health systems, reforms powered by innovation, simple conviction that every Kenyan, wherever they live and whatever their means, deserves equal care. 27 million Kenyans are now registered in SHA, more than triple the number ever reached by the former NHIF. This is a demonstration that leaving no one behind was and is not a slogan. It is a promise on course to fulfillment. Additionally, more than 10,000 health facilities across the country have signed in to serve under this new system. But honorable members, real health care begins long before patients reach a hospital. That is why in September 2023, we deployed 107,000 community health promoters, the largest primary health workforce in our history, trained, equipped, and present in every ward in all our 47 counties. Their impact has been extraordinary. Consider 3 statistics. 8.9 million households have so far been visited. 9.9 million diabetes screenings have been done with 134,000 cases diagnosed. 6.5 million hypertension screenings have been conducted with 305,000 cases confirmed. Millions of lives have been touched and thousands saved. This is what equity looks like. This is the meaning of universal health care. This is leaving no Kenyan behind indeed. Behind these numbers stand the community health promoters, quiet, devoted, tireless, heroes of this new era. Today, we honor them. We thank them. To them, we say Kenya is healthier because of you. Mr. Speaker, when I promised that those unable to pay would be supported by government under UHC, the cynics scoffed as usual. Today, we are paying premiums for 2.3 million vulnerable Kenyans, including orphans, widows, the elderly, and those without income. Because for them, healthcare is not a privilege. And I must commend members of this august House who have stepped in to support vulnerable families in this gesture. We are also modernizing hospital equipment through the National Equipment Service Project, replacing the old MES model that burdened counties with heavy upfront costs. Under the new fee-for-service system, private partners install, maintain, and run state-of-the-art equipment, and public facilities pay only when they. We have overhauled to end the chronic crisis drug shortage, raising medicine availability from 48% to 68%, projected 90% by the end of this year, and 100% by March next year. This is more than healthcare reform. It is a long-deferred promise, finally taking shape. A Kenya where every citizen can face tomorrow with confidence, knowing their nation will stand with them in their hour of need. It fulfills our national values of dignity and equity as stated in Article 10 of the Constitution. In the same spirit, the government is strengthening financial protection for Kenyans under cancer treatment. Social Health Authority will enhance the cancer benefits package from the current 550,000 shillings to Kenya shillings 800,000, effective December 1. This enhancement responds to the rising cost of sustained cancer care and ensures that patients can access quality, uninterrupted treatment without facing financial hardship. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, when I assumed office, our education sector was in distress with a strained CBC transition, a chronic teacher deficit, universities on the edge of insolvency, and overstretched infrastructure. We moved quickly to restore education as the great equalizer. Through the student-centered funding model, scholarships and loans now follow need and merit, placing the learner at the center. Nearly 500,000 students have already benefited from this model. We then tackled the teacher crisis head-on. We have hired, as you all know, 76,000 teachers, with 24,000 more to be brought in by January next year. That will translate to 100,000 teachers in 3 years, an achievement unmatched in the history of our country. Together with the national government CDF, we have delivered 23,000 new classrooms and 1,600 laboratories are under construction, easing congestion and giving CBC the dignified facilities it requires. TVET has become the engine of practical skills. Enrollment from 341,000 to 718,000 Kenyans embrace engineering, ICT, modern agriculture, design, and the trades that power a modern economy. In strengthening education, we are giving life to the national values in Article equity, human dignity, development, ensuring every child has a fair chance to rise. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, 3 years ago when we said we would deliver affordable housing, the cynics dismissed it. They said it was fantasy. When they realized we were serious, they called it impossible. And when we broke ground across the country, they suggested that these projects would stall. Today, those doubts have given way to a very different question from Kenyans everywhere. How do I own one of these units? That is now the question. Across the country, we are delivering the most extensive housing rollout in Kenya's history. 230,000 affordable homes. And we meet student needs. 178,000 beds have been packaged for universities, TVETs, KMTCs, with 74,000 already under construction, transforming a sector where fewer than 10% once had decent accommodation. Additionally, 270 modern markets are taking shape nationwide, providing vital spaces for women and MSMEs, with another 175 underway, expanding the backbone of local commerce. And through the Nairobi River Regeneration Program, 44,000 young people are restoring the river corridor and preparing sites for 10,000 social homes along the renewed riverfront. The program, the housing program, including markets and hostels, has created over 428,000 jobs. Jobs that include architects, engineers, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, masons, steel workers, transporters, and thousands of MSMEs in fittings, fabrication, and interior design work. At peak next year, it will employ at least 1 million Kenyans. Honorable members, this program is far more than housing. It is a national empowerment engine, creating jobs, formalizing the informal sector, revitalizing micro, small, and medium enterprises, restoring our environment, and building resilient communities. It advances equity, dignity, and sustainable development, the very values anchored in Article 10 of our Constitution. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, allow me to turn to a sector that carries the hopes of nearly every Kenyan family, our micro, small, and medium enterprises. MSMEs are the backbone of our economy, the engine room of innovation, and the daily hustle of more than 15 million Kenyans. For decades, access to affordable credit trapped millions in frustration. Without collateral, there was no loans. For the millions blacklisted, every door of opportunity was shut. And when banks refused to take a chance, their dreams simply stalled. As promised, we broke that cycle. The Financial Inclusion Fund, the Hustler Fund, now stands as the largest financial inclusion program since independence, extending over 80 billion shillings to 7 million Kenyans. And those who were blacklisted, the 7 million once blacklisted Kenyans, have since repaired their credits. 3 million small businesses and their owners, previously locked out of the formal finance, are now banked. And 2 million Kenyans are now frequent borrowers. Today, through the Hustler Fund Bridge Facility, 800,000 entrepreneurs are accessing up to 150,000 shillings each without collateral to expand and grow their businesses. But, honorable members, credit alone is not enough. Many young people do not lack ideas, they lack opportunity. That is why we launched Nyota, the National Youth Opportunities and Transformation Agenda, one of the most ambitious youth empowerment programs in our history. Over the next 5 years, Nyota will uplift 820,000 unemployed young people through apprenticeship, recognition of prior learning, entrepreneurship grants, digital skills training, and support savings. When the program is fully implemented, it will have placed 90,000 young people into work or enterprise, certified 20,000 into different skill areas, capitalized 110,000 businesses, and matched savings for 190,000 savers, while building capacity of 600,000 more to undertake government procurement under the ACBO program. Ladies and gentlemen, over the past 3 years, our digital transformation agenda has become one of the most powerful engines of renewal. A quiet revolution changing how Kenyans live, how they work, learn, or do business. We have expanded the fiber optic by 24,000 kilometers and moved from 0 public Wi-Fi hotspots in 2022 to nearly 1,500 today, connecting communities once left behind. We have set up 300 digital innovation hubs with 400 in the pipeline, gateways where ideas grow and enterprises begin. At the heart of this shift is digital government. From less than 400 services on eCitizen to 22,500, we have delivered one of the fastest digital migration in the world. Access is easier, efficiency higher, leakages sealed, and corruption pushed out. And as our young people are driving it, nearly 2 million have been trained in digital skills, and 300,000 now earn a living online through Ajira, Jitume, and our expanding business process outsourcing sector. Mr. Speaker, having set out the work of the last 3 years, it would be easy, almost comfortable, to pause, congratulate ourselves, and settle into the warmth of modest progress. But comfort is how nations stall. It is how Kenya won the Asian tigers raced ahead. We cannot allow that. We will not allow that. And we must not allow it. Because this moment demands more of us. More courage, more ambition, and a refusal to settle for the ordinary. As I said earlier, we often speak of the Asian tigers with a reference that makes their rise seem like a miracle. from a distant world. We marvel at how they journeyed from poverty to industrial powerhouses, from aid recipients to exporters of world-class goods. And we ask, what secret advantage did they have? History answers us plainly. They had none. Their rise was not magic. It was intentional and crafted through leadership, discipline, strategic investment, and uncompromising rejection of mediocrity. Their stories begin in ruins. The example of post-war Japan, with barely 2,000 kilometers of paved road, and South Korea, whose GDP per capita was nearly identical to Kenya's at independence. Today, Japan commands over 1.1 million kilometers of paved roads, while Kenya has 22,000, 62 years after independence. South Korea's GDP per capita now exceeds $36,000 compared to our own $2,200. These comparisons are not meant to indict us, but to demonstrate what becomes possible when a nation chooses ambition over resignation. From their journeys, clear lessons emerge. These nations set aside small dreams and integrated boldly with global markets. They built first world infrastructure in what was third world environments. They invested obsessively in their people, the engineers, scientists, innovators, and technicians who powered their ascent. They generated electricity from all sources available to power their enterprise, innovation that led to manufacturing, industrialization, and progress. They simplified investment through institutional reforms that allowed capital, technology, and talent to progress without friction. They prioritized production by planning their industries long before those industries emerged. Critically, they nurtured ecosystems of relentless innovation, giving rise to global giants like Samsung, Hyundai, Toyota, and Sony, companies that began modestly and grew to define modern history. The task before us, therefore, is unmistakably clear. If Kenya is to grow at scale, we must raise our ambition. It is for this reason, Mr. Speaker and honorable members, that under my leadership, we are raising the bar of national ambition. And that is why I am today submitting a roadmap to take Kenya to the next level. We are committing to undertake a minimum of 4 major national priorities whose rationale I shall explain. First, we must invest relentlessly in our people, in their education, skills development, scientific training, and innovation capacity. We have already set the foundation through the major reforms in the education sector. We have increased the education budget from 490 billion in 2021 to over 700 billion this year, which has facilitated better infrastructure in our education system, more teachers and trainers, and enhanced funding for our colleges and universities. I have reorganized government departments to establish a dedicated State Department for Science, Research, and Innovation to support the urgent need to scale up STEM courses in our education system, strengthen innovation, promote research, and create a pool of high-level professionals in engineering and science. This structure will also help actualize the 2% research fund needed to make this ambition a reality. We must fund and deliberately scale up and commercial to create. We must actualize the National Research Fund, moving from the current 0.8% of GDP to 2% of GDP. This leaves us with a shortfall today of 180 billion. Progressively, we should grow the fund to 1 trillion over the next 10 years. We will mobilize domestic public resources, private investment, venture capital, and other private sector financing to drive this effort, because no nation rises above the abilities of its citizens. Let me repeat that. Gentlemen and ladies, no nation rises above the abilities of its citizens. And we must promote a culture of enterprise so that Kenyan companies can cross borders. The example of Safaricom's M-Pesa, growing from a local solution into a global financial platform, serving more than 70 million customers in 170 countries today. This demonstrates the possibilities we can unlock. Secondly, we must turn around our economy from a net importer to a net exporter of products, goods, and services. The most urgent being imports of food products that cost us 500 billion shillings every year. Just imagine. We are importing maize, wheat, rice, edible oil, to Kenya at a cost of 500 billion shillings every year. As I mentioned earlier, we have already made interventions to reduce imports of maize, sugar, edible oils, rice, wheat, but our efforts are undermined by the natural limits of rain-fed agriculture. We can no longer allow the clouds to determine whether our people eat or not. We are able to produce enough for domestic consumption and exports. Expanded modern irrigation is now necessity and the only path forward. We are endowed, ladies and gentlemen, honorable members, with arable land, yet we all know only 15% of Kenya can support rain-fed agriculture. And this limited area is what we have relied on to feed the entire nation. While 85% of Kenya does not receive sufficient rainfall, if we harvested and stored rainwater, we can bring vast arable lands in these arid and semi-arid regions into productive use. With the dams, we can transform our arid and semi-arid areas into hubs of agricultural production, even in the absence of rainfall. We must never give up on the potential of these regions simply because they receive little rain. And we must never confuse the lack of rain with the lack of water. This is why we must build at least 50 mega dams nationwide, alongside 200 additional medium and small dams and thousands of micro dams to collect and store water, not only to secure our food supply, but to bring at least 2.5 million additional acres under irrigation within the next 5 to 7 years. Therefore, the commitment to harvest and store water is not simply about food and water security. It is a strategic, nation-shaping investment, one that underpins our aspiration to be a net exporter of agricultural products. underpins economic independence, rural prosperity, and sustainable development. The Ministry of Water and Sanitation and Irrigation, alongside all relevant agencies, have already mapped out precise locations of these dams. These projects span the breadth of our republic. Sorry. From the High Grand Falls, a mega dam on River Dawa in Mandera, Isiolo, Pasalinga Dam, Yata in Machakos, Singli Canal in Garissa, Soin Koru in Kisumu, Rumuruti in Laikipia, Thochi in Embu and Tharaka, Lowat in Turkana, Mahoya Dam, straddling Nyeri and Kirinyaga, Narosra in Narok, Aror in Elgeyo Marakwet. Others include Ndarugu in Kiambu, Kokwanyo in Homa Bay, Rare in Kilifi, Tongaren in Bungoma, and many more strategic sites nationwide. Mr. Speaker, expanded irrigation will also supply the volumes, consistency, and quality of raw materials required for our next economic frontier, which is agro-industrialization. Irrigation will produce the raw materials, and our SEZs, EPZs, and county aggregation and industrial parks will convert them into high-value products for national, regional, and global markets. Honorable members, energy is the lifeblood of any modern economy. No nation has developed without abundant, reliable, and affordable power. This is our third national priority. Although we have an installed capacity of 3,300 megawatts, the intermittence of solar and wind means our farm capacity is only 2,300 megawatts, far below what the Kenya of the present, let alone tomorrow, will require. To drive domestic electrification, industrial manufacturing, e-mobility, green industrialization, digital expansion, and a technology-enabled future, we must dramatically expand power generation. Kenya is blessed with diverse, largely underexploited renewable sources, including geothermal, solar, hydro, wind, and nuclear. To undertake large-scale value addition, agro-processing, manufacturing and industrialization, sufficient, affordable, and reliable energy is a top imperative. Modern technologies, such as data centers and artificial intelligence, require large-scale energy supply. To modernize our economy, leverage on technology to create new opportunities, and to turn our agriculture and natural resources into products, manufacturing and industrialization consume many megawatts of energy. As a result, we have to generate an additional 10,000 megawatts in the next 7 years, so as to move our country to the next level and undertake the transition necessary for our growth. Our fourth national priority is transport and logistics. As the region's economic and diplomatic hub, home to the United Nations' largest office and only office in the Global South, and the sixth largest economy in Africa, Kenya must maintain world-class seaports, airports, highways, and digital corridors. Efficient transport and logistics are the backbone of our competitiveness. They accelerate national development, connect products to markets, move goods and services, lower the cost of doing business, and will reinforce Kenya as the aviation and commercial capital of East and Central Africa. History teaches us that nations rise on the strength of transport and logistics. Japan's post-war revival, enabled by strategic road expansion, is a clear example. From only 2,000 kilometers of road, they constructed over 1 million kilometers of paved road in 7 decades. We in Kenya, you know, we have only constructed 22,000 kilometers over a relatively similar period. To scale up, ladies and gentlemen, honorable members, our transport and logistics program, the Ministry of Roads and Transport have already mapped out a comprehensive network of 2,500 kilometers of highway and 20 kilometers of road to be tarmacked. We will onboard private-public partnership in the modernization of Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, Mombasa and Lamu Airport, and sort out the challenges facing Kenya Airways by now. This work is already in progress. Next week, I will launch the dualling of the 170-kilometer Rironi-Naivasha-Nakuru-Mau Summit Road. On the same day, I will break ground on the dualling of the 58-kilometer Rironi-Mai-Mahiu-Naivasha road. The gridlock that paralyzes these roads every day, especially on weekends and holidays, will soon, by God's grace, be a thing of the past. Additionally, roads earmarked for dualling include Muthaiga-Kiambu Ndumberi, Machakos Junction Mariakani, Mau Summit Kericho Kisumu, Kisumu Busia, Mau Summit Eldoret Malaba, Athi River Namanga, Karatina Nanyuki Isiolo, Makutano Embu Meru Maua, Mtwapa Malindi Mombasa, all the way to Lungalunga, Kericho Kisii Migori Isabenia, and Nakuru Nyahururu Karatina Kisii Oyugis Ahero. The Northern Bypass, James Gishuru Roads, Bomas Karen Gong, and Bomas Ongata Rongai Kiserian, including Gong Isinya and Naivasha to Kikuyu, among many other key corridors nationwide. This infrastructure drive will also include extending the standard gauge railway from Naivasha to Kisumu and eventually to Malaba. And that exercise, ladies and gentlemen, is beginning in January. In just 2 months, we will be beginning that process. Honorable members, estimates indicate that achieving Honorable members, estimates indicate that achieving these 4 priorities will require at least 5 trillion. This is undeniably a large sum. Some may see it as unrealistic, even audacious, for a country like ours. But allow me to recall President John F. Kennedy's words in 1962 as he rallied America to reach the moon. And this is what he said, and I quote, "We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that challenge is one we are willing to accept. one we are unwilling to postpone. These 4 projects are our national imperatives, commitments we must embrace without hesitation, not because they are easy, not because they are cheap, but because they are absolutely necessary, because they are worthy of our time. This is the assignment of our generation. This is the purpose for this administration and this parliament, the 13th parliament. And this is the moment we must rise up to. Which brings us to the next question. Given our fiscal constraints, how shall we finance these transformative projects and do so sustainably? The answer, ladies and gentlemen, lies in 2 key financing vehicles: the National Infrastructure Fund and the Sovereign Wealth Fund. As noted earlier, our development ambitions require sustained, large-scale investment in education, in roads, in energy, water systems, logistics, transport, and digital network. Yet, our fiscal space is narrow. We cannot continue funding essential infrastructure through unsustainable borrowing and burdening taxpayers with additional taxes. But neither can we afford to postpone these imperatives without risking our future. There is need to be innovative in the use of our national revenues, or the national revenues at our disposal. There is need to deploy our national assets available to us in creating public-private partnerships that will crowd in the enormous pool of private sector resources available regionally and globally. This is why we will establish the National Infrastructure Fund, whose architecture will be underpinned by the reforms in the Government-Owned Enterprises Bill passed by this august House that I will sign into law tomorrow. This fund is the strategic solution that will provide a framework to innovatively scale up our resources to match our ambition. It will fulfill our manifesto commitment to rebuild Kenya's infrastructure while reducing reliance on tax and debt. We will do this by using budgeted resources prudently and introducing a financing architecture that leverages capital markets, diversifies ownership through unlocking of national assets through privatization, and use PPP frameworks to channel private capital into public priorities. For decades, Kenya has privatized major public assets, from Kenya Airways to KenGen, from Kenya Re to Safaricom. Yet, we cannot point to enduring national assets built from privatization proceeds because the funds were absorbed into budgets and spent. The National Infrastructure Fund will break this cycle. All proceeds from privatization will be ring-fenced, preserved, and reinvested into new infrastructure and wealth-creating assets. When ownership shifts to the private sector for efficiency, the benefits to the public will not diminish, they will multiply. For every shilling invested from privatization proceeds, we aim to attract 10 shillings from long-term investors drawn from pension funds, sovereign partners, private equity, and development finance institutions. This multiplier will allow us to build critical infrastructure without adding to tax or debt burden. This model is proven. Australia's Future Fund, Singapore's Temasek, and UAE's Mubadala demonstrate that commercially run public investment funds can grow national wealth and deliver transformative infrastructure. The National Infrastructure Fund is therefore more than a financing tool. It is a generational strategy, preserving value, mobilizing capital, accelerating delivery, and ensuring Kenya becomes stronger, wealthier, and more competitive. Ladies and gentlemen, honorable members, our Constitution under Article 201C stipulates that the burdens and benefits of the use of resources and public borrowing shall be shared equitably between present and future generations. In essence, when we use natural resources or borrow, we must ensure future generations are not left poorer. That is why, alongside the National Infrastructure Fund, we will establish the Sovereign Wealth Fund to give full effect to the constitutional principle of intergenerational equity. A portion of all royalties from natural resources and a portion of proceeds from privatization of national assets will be invested in the fund. This fund will rest on three pillars. Number one, savings, to be invested for the future, as countries like Norway, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia have done with trillion-dollar funds. Number two, stabilization, a buffer against global shocks, including commodity volatilities, pandemics, and geopolitical disruptions to ensure fiscal stability. And number three, infrastructure. A carefully managed share will be invested in commercial terms to attract private capital to national projects while growing public wealth. History has already warned us. Along our coast region, titanium deposits have been exploited and depleted. And because we lacked a sovereign wealth framework, future generations will inherit nothing from the resources that we got from titanium. We cannot repeat this mistake. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, that is the scale of our national ambition. This is the blueprint for financing it prudently and responsibly. To shape this vision, I have engaged sincerely with leaders across the political spectrum. I've engaged many members of parliament, many governors, community leaders, and with Kenyans from all walks of life. I discussed this vision with the late Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga in the presence of Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, who reminded me that no nation has industrialized without roads, energy, and food security. I have engaged former President Uhuru Kenyatta, who emphasized the necessity of scaling up infrastructure investments. Honorable members, allow me to express profound gratitude to the 13th Parliament for your outstanding contribution, your foresight, your consistency, focus, and commitment on what is good for Kenya. The progress made in the last 3 years would not have been possible without your legislative agility, principled oversight, and commitment to national interest. When the history of this generation is written, this House, the 13th Parliament, will occupy a full and proud chapter. Your decisions are recorded not only in debates or statutes, but in the lives lived, progress of every Kenyan that has been achieved. For this, I extend my deepest gratitude and appreciation. I also extend heartfelt thanks to hard-working Kenyans who have diligently fulfilled their civic duty to the nation, giving life to the constitutional values of equity, social justice, and sustainable development. You Kenyans have shouldered the weight of nation building. Future generations will feel the impact of your sacrifice, and they will honor you as the generation that helped change the trajectory of our republic. As I conclude, I reiterate that those of us in leadership must bear in mind one critical lesson. Leaders are not ultimately judged by the vision they carry, or the statements they make, or the mantra they repeat. They are judged by the actions they take, the values they generate, the difference they make, and the impact they leave in the lives of the people. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, let history record that this generation refused to be timid, that we chose ambition over fear, action over excuses, and progress over false comfort of low expectation. Let it be said that when Kenya stood at crossroads, we reached for the higher path. The work ahead is formidable, but so is the Kenyan spirit. This is our moment to lift Kenya to the next frontier. This is our moment to shape a nation worthy of its promise. This is our moment to rise. Honorable members, it is now my pleasure to submit to Parliament the following 3 reports as required by the Constitution. Number 1, reports on all measures taken and progress achieved in the realization of the national values as I have espoused. Number 2, report on progress made in fulfilling the international obligations of the Republic. And number 3, the report of the state of security of the country. Now, therefore, I hand over the reports to the Speaker of the Senate and the Speaker of the National Assembly, and I thank you for your attention. God bless you, and God bless our great country, Kenya.
Honorable member.